usually I walk in that office, oh, we need a blood test, we need this test. We're like, I can't have blood from anybody after 16 years.
Tonight we're looking at Numbers 3, the census of the Levites. Last week in chapter 2, we talked about the census of the army, basically, the ones that are above a certain age, I believe it's 20, that they could fight. So now we're going to talk, and that's about 600,000 plus, that's 600,330, something like that. So, 350, I guess it was. Tonight we're going to be talking about, in Numbers 3, the family of Aaron, or the priests, okay, the rest of Israel. Talked about the 11 tribes, now we're going to talk about the 12th tribe. These are the generations, verse 1, these are the generations of Aaron and Moses in the day that the Lord spake with Moses in Mount Sinai. And these are the names of the sons of Aaron: Nadab, the firstborn, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. These are the names of the sons of Aaron, the priest, which were anointed, whom he consecrated to minister in the priest's office. And Nadab and Abihu died before the Lord when they offered strange fire before the Lord in the wilderness of Sinai. And they had no children. And Eleazar and Ithamar ministered in the priest's office in the sight of Aaron their father. So if you can remember back to Leviticus, these two older sons of Aaron got it in their head that they could do the sacrifices too, that they could light the fire and do all that. And they did, and that's why they called it a word that they used. They had no children. They offered strange fire. The fire that was supposed to have been is when the fire of God came down and lit in the bronze altar, lit that sacrificial altar, then they kept it going. The priest did it. Okay? And from that, it was continued on. Well, they gave it another, they made their own fire or did something to offer the sacrifices. Because of that, they died. So Aaron only had 2 remaining children. And Aaron's family, him and those 2 children, and they were older, not real old, but they were older. They were the ones that did the bulk. They were the priests, okay? The Levites were the ones that served God, but the priests were the ones that did the sacrificing, that cut the meat, that went into the holiest of holies, did all these things. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight a little bit. All this stuff as we go forward. Adam Clark, the commentator, noted that Moses didn't appoint his sons to leadership at all in Israel. Moses passes by his own family or immediate descendants. He gave no rank or privilege to them during his life and left nothing to them at his death. They became incorporated with the Levites, from or amongst whom they are never distinguished. Now, we do see that they are in a place of prominence as far as where their stature was. They, with Aaron, were in the front of the tabernacle. If you remember last week, the tabernacle faced east. They were right in front of it.
But they couldn't go in.
Well, they could go in it. They're priests. I mean, the Levites could. The Levites couldn't, but Aaron and his sons could. But they were camped. They had their tents and stuff in front of it.
Oh, that's right.
And then Judah and the others that was there on that east side. And it goes about and talks about the death of Nadab and Abihu. It's referred to 5 times in Leviticus and Numbers. This repetition, anytime something's repeated several times in the Bible, means you need to pay attention. God didn't want this. It says, seemingly the most common reports of failure we hear of God's ministers in our own day are of their malfeasance, indolence, greed, lust, and abuse of power. Tragically, the lessons of the past are forgotten with frightful ease. The spiritual descendants of Nadab and Abihu continue to occupy the ranks of the ministers of God. There are still some preachers out there that's just in it for them. Just to get rich, just to do, they may think they're doing God's will, I guess, but they're fooled. They're not. They're not doing God's will. And it said spiritual descendants because it told us that they didn't have any children. Okay? And they died somewhere between, in that year, from when they left Egypt to where they got to Mount Sinai. So they died somewhere in that year. We don't know exactly where. The second two sons, Eleazar and Ithamar, were the third and the fourth sons born of Aaron. So they inherited the priesthood and passed it down to their sons after them. They were the anointed priests. Now before this it was kind of Moses, but once Moses anointed Aaron and his two sons, he took a back seat. He no longer did the priestly job. He was trying to move that part over to Aaron. He was more, at that time, as a prophet, and he had done God's will up until that time. Because
also
usually,
pretty much an aide by then.
an aide?
He's older.
No, Aaron's actually older than Moses. Okay? Because Aaron's firstborn, then Moses. Maybe it's Aaron, Miriam, and then Moses. There's three of them in his family, so he's the youngest. But he was 80 years old. Moses was when he left Egypt. Remember? So it tells us in chapter 5 through 10, says, and the Lord spoken to Moses. Here again, he never spoke to Aaron directly. He always spoke to Moses, and Moses passed it off. So he's operating in the office of the prophet here. Okay? And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, bring the tribe of Levi near, and present them before Aaron the priest, that they may minister unto him. And they shall keep his charge, and the charge of the whole congregation before the tabernacle of the congregation, to do the service of the tabernacle. And they shall keep all the instruments of the tabernacle of the congregation, and the charge of the children of Israel, to do the service of the tabernacle. And thou shalt give the Levites unto Aaron and to his priests. They are wholly given unto him out of the children of Israel. And thou shalt anoint Aaron and his sons, and they shall wait on their priest's office, and the stranger that cometh nigh shall be put to death. So we see right here, God's telling him, you're going to anoint these three, Aaron and his two sons. Now, he is giving, since Aaron only had two sons, we don't know how many exactly after that, how many his sons had sons that were old enough to do the priest's work. Going back to Leviticus, they started helping at the age of 20, but they could fully do the Levite work at 30. Okay? They could help them do stuff, but to be the leader. And we're going to go through it a little bit in a minute as a reminder of what all the different facets were that the tribe of Levi did. It says these were important aspects of the Levite service. They served the priest. So if the priest said, go get the wood for this, or go do that, or we're getting ready to leave, you guys need to break down the tabernacle, whatever, that's the charge. Here again, going back to last week, he's trying to put an order to all this. So, first of all, it's going to be Aaron, the priest. In just a few minutes, we're going to see that Eleazar is going to be chief of the Levites. So he's kind of over him.
That Moses wouldn't go straight to Aaron, and he only told Moses what he wanted Aaron to know?
Because that's just the way God worked.
Unless it was just
he went to Moses first.
Aaron to be in charge.
No, he went to Moses first.
Yeah.
Okay? In the burning bush, out in the desert. And so Moses was one. He didn't go to Aaron. Aaron was still with them and the slaves in Egypt. Okay? He was still back there. So God spoke to Moses like he spoke to all those in the Bible that would listen to him. that would serve him. We see Moses had a good report. The only thing he had up until he died, he didn't get to go over to the promised land because he didn't follow God's words exactly. Okay? So we got to be careful. And that's why I think another thing is because of the golden calf incident, Aaron was in, he may not have been in charge of that, but he participated in it. Okay? So that kind of put him in the back seat a little bit. Not entirely, because he's still going to be anointed the priest, but he kind of put it back that, well, the people said they was uprising, they were going to take over, and do it themselves if I didn't do it. Yeah, maybe. We don't know. That's kind of a sorry excuse, but. So the other job between all this that they're talking about, they had one other important responsibility, and that was to teach the people God's word. Okay? Moses, in this particular time, was writing down all that had happened from the very beginning. Genesis, all the first 5 books was written from God by Moses. Okay? Moses is supposedly the author of all those first 5 books. Whether he got all the information for God or got some information in between, Adam and Eve, that may have been something God added to him. I'm sure they had the history down, the people, the genealogy, but God added things. I'm sure, why they got kicked out of the Garden of Eden, why they did this, So it's a combination. But they had to uphold that. That's what they were supposed to do. They were supposed to teach the people about God. Okay? There are modern preachers, what we call the priests are.
Kind of spreading the word.
They are. They were supposed to. That's what they were supposed to get it underneath each one of them. It says we also see in 1 Chronicles, in David's time, the Levites from the families of Gershon, Kohath, and Merari also served as musicians. Okay? It's a little later in time, probably several hundred years later. But that's another function that they play. So it's saying, bring the tribe of Levi near. That Hebrew word, hakarab, is properly a sacrificial word. It signifies a presenting of a sacrifice or an offering to the Lord. As an offering, the tribe of Levi was given up entirely to the service of the sanctuary, to be no longer their own, but God's property. Now, if you go through, and once we finish here, we'll know how many were the Levites, but they're the small. We talked about the smallest tribe. Back there was Ephraim and his brother Manasseh. They wasn't actually the smallest. They were the smallest. Levi was the smallest of each one. But they're going to be set aside for a special purpose.
They might have been small, but they were particularly a purpose for them.
Yeah, we'll go through that in just a minute. According to the author or the commentator Wenham, attend to his needs is more literally to keep guard. Lexicons explain the verb samuru, to keep watch. They were given this to watch over the tabernacle. Okay? They had to be permanently on guard, ready to kill any unauthorized person approaching the tent of meeting, its furniture, or the altar. The phrase, he shall be put to death, implies a judicial execution, though in this context it was more like a policeman shooting a bank robber.
Okay? Don't you think that would be a real special feeling to feel you are selected to take care of the temple?
Sure. So they were to protect against both enemies, foreign and friends of Israelites. None of them were authorized to go into the court, the tabernacle, or the courts. Whereas the Mesopotamians and the Egyptians, they had statues of divine emissaries as guardians and various temples around. Of course, they were enslaved there for 400 years, so Israel knew of no such demonic entities in their prophetic religion. There was but one true power in the universe. The God of Israel and his sanctuary must be protected and secured from the intrusion or defilement by the only remaining adversary, which is man. And it's got a lot more commentary. We're going to go on down to the bottom of the page in
5.
Yeah, page 4. It does say one thing here that I want to bring out right above that in 3I. It's got I. In the New Covenant, every believer is a priest. Okay? That office has been done away with. It tells us in 1 Peter 2 and 5, Revelation 1 and 6, and Revelation 5 and 10, there's no structure or order in the New Covenant community. All have equal standing before God in Jesus Christ and equal access to God in Jesus. That's what changed with Jesus. He made it available for everybody. Before, they had to go to the priest. They had to do the sacrifices. They had to do all this. Now they don't. Okay, that's the one difference that Christ made before them. That's a difference, okay? Verse 11 through 13. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, And I, behold, I have taken the Levites from among the children of Israel, instead of all the firstborn that openeth the matrix among the children of Israel. Therefore the Levites shall be mine, because all the firstborn are mine. For on the day that I smote, all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, I hallowed unto me all the firstborn of Israel, both man and beast. Mine shall they be. I am the Lord. Now, do you remember during the Passover, back when they were getting ready to leave? Yeah. God told Moses to tell them, go put blood on the doorposts from a lamb, and that will protect you. That will be the angel of death will pass over you. But if they don't, the firstborn will die. Here, God is saying, I want the firstborn. I did that for a reason back there, and I saved every one of you, of the Israelites' firstborn, but now I want them. And instead of taking them, he just said, we'll do a substitute. I'll take the whole tribe of Levi. So if you have Judah or Dan or Asher or any of those other tribes, you don't have to serve the temple, just the Levites. So God did an exchange there for them. Okay? It says in the law of Moses, God had special claim to the firstborn of Israel. That's back in Exodus 13. Exodus passage shows us this was both true of man and beast. We'll see that in a little bit. So this demonstrated the principle that God has claim to the first and the best of our blessings. It's one of the forerunners of the tithe, too. Okay? He wants the first part, first fruits that we have. Whenever they had a crop come in, they had to pay their first fruits. And they paid it to the Israelites, the priests, I'm sorry. So now they're going to have a census of the tribe of Levi. Verse 14 through 20. And the Lord spake unto Moses in the wilderness of Sinai, saying, Number the children of Levi after the house of their fathers by their families. Every male from a month old and upward shalt thou number them. And Moses numbered them according to the word of the Lord, as he was commanded. And these were the sons of Levi by their names, Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. And these are the names of the sons of Gershon by their families, Libni, Shimei, and the sons of Kohath by their families, Amram, Izhar, Hebron, and Uzal. And these are the sons of Merari by their families, Mahli and Mushi. These are the families of the Levites according to the house of their fathers. So as we see, I'm going to scoot over just a little bit because that sun's reflecting off that car. Yeah, he's reflecting right off that car.
A little bit.
Yeah. So they're going to conduct it. Now, they wasn't in the previous census, okay? They didn't count them. And you got to remember.
Why did they not count them?
Because they were not warriors.
Oh,
Okay? The previous count was those that were going to be able to go to war. So those that were 20 and up. Well, here it says from a month old and up. So it's a different census, different group of people. And they went again by their houses of their fathers. First, Levi, of course, but then Levi had these three sons, Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. Now, Levi was back in Joseph's days. So in that time, they had a whole bunch of people in there. Okay? So verse 31 through 20, or 21 through 26. Of Gershon, I'm sorry, I'm saying it wrong. Gershon was the family of the Libanites and the family of the Shemites. These are the families of the Gershonites, those that were numbered of them according to the number of all the males from a month up old and upward. Even those that were numbered of them were 7,500. The families of the Gershonites shall pitch behind the tabernacle in the west. Okay? And the chief of the house of the father of the Gershonites shall be Eliasaph, I don't know, something like that, the son of Lael. And the charge of his sons of Gershon in the tabernacle of the congregation shall be the tabernacle and the tent, the covering thereof, and the hanging for the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, and the hangings of the court, and the curtain for the door of the court, which is by the tabernacle, and by the altar round about it, and the cords of it, all the service thereof. So this is telling what they have to do. This tribe, or this part of Levi, this family of Levi, the family of Gershon. They had 7,500 males, and they were on the west side. And you got to understand, this is the inner part. You had the tabernacle, and the Levites surrounded the tabernacle. You have the Gershonites here, and as we go around, we'll go each one of them, each direction, and find out who they are. So the Gershonites, they took care of the outside part. Remember, the tabernacle consisted of a cloth that went all the way up and down and around all over the top. That's the roof. Then they had some skins on top of it, ram skins. Then they had badger skins. All that was on top and around it. And then they had to take care of that. So they had to undo it, roll it up, and put it in place. And it also said the hangings of the court. Okay, so that one of the hangings at the front of the court, that you remember inside it, they had a wall of linen all the way around the tabernacle. So that's talking about that. Okay, that linen. And the curtain that separated that to go into the tabernacle part. And then into the tabernacle, there was another curtain that went into the first part of the tabernacle. And then there was another curtain in the Holy of Holies. Now, they didn't take care of that. Okay? It doesn't say that. It'll say that in a little bit. That's Aaron and his job.
how many cords was
Two.
there?
There's one in the front and one in the back. That's the tabernacle itself. And then outside of that was also, they couldn't come just for sacrifices and stuff. Otherwise, the Levites wouldn't let them come in that inner, because it was all surrounded by curtains. Remember that linen was around it? So going back to,
so detailed.
yeah, well, he's got to tell them how to do these things. So they were the ones responsible to disassemble the tent, to transport it, to reassemble it, and the upkeep of the tent with the coverings, the screens, the hangings, and the cords. The cords are the ropes. Whenever they would make that linen space or the tent that the tabernacle was on, the way they do tents, they'll tie it up to a stake and pull it down and pound it in the ground. Well, that's that rope. That's the cords that they're talking about. Well, that's just one of the three families. Okay. The next group, let's see, it's the Kohathites, 27 through 32. The Kohath was the family of the Amorites, and the family of the Israelites, and the family of the Hebronites, and the family of the Uzalites. These are the families. He had 4 kids, Kohath did. and they are the families of the Kohathites. And the number of all the males from a month old and upward were 8,600, keeping the charge of the sanctuary. The families of the sons of Kohath shall pitch on the tabernacle southward. Okay? Others were on the westward, the Gershonites. Now they're on the south side. And the chief of the house of the father of the families of the Kohathites shall be Eleazar, the son of Uzal. And their charge shall be the ark, and the table, and the candlestick, and the altars, and the vessels of the sanctuary wherewith they minister, and the hanging, that's the veil, and all the service thereof. And Eleazar, the son of Aaron the priest, shall be chief over the chief of the Levites, and have the oversight of them that keep the charge of the sanctuary. So they were in charge of the furniture inside. They didn't go in. They only went in. See, first it was all, they'd take the tabernacle down and start undoing it, and then the furnishings are inside. So then the Kohathites would go inside and they would start putting the poles together, and they were the ones that lifted it up and held it on their shoulders. They did the showbread, the table of showbread, the menorahs, the brazen altar, all these different pieces of the tabernacle that they used, and part of the other, and we'll read some more in a minute. Now, of these, okay, if you go all the way back to one of the first parts in Exodus, Kohath, he was, some of them, Korah, was under the leadership of Kohath. Later, Korah challenged the authority of Moses and Aaron, and because of that, Korah got swallowed up. Him and his followers got swallowed up. The earth opened up and swallowed them. Remember?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. For disobeying him.
You don't do that with Christ, no.
Well, this is why they think Kohath is kind of raised up, so they are taking care of the furniture. Okay? Of this family, this group, this is where Moses and Aaron's family is in. Amram was the father of Moses, Aaron, and Miriam. Amramites remind us of the family of Aaron and Moses. Aaron is an Amorite, so is Moses. The presence of the family of the Amorites suggests that Amram was not the direct father of Aaron, Miriam, and Moses, but an ancestor. Okay, maybe his grandfather or great-grandfather. Wow. So, but they came from the family of Kohath, which was of the tribe of Levi. Here again, they did all the furniture of the tabernacle, the Ark of the Covenant, the table of the showbread, the lampstands, the altars, the tools, and the furnishings. All the work relating to them means they were responsible for conveying them, the proper transport, the placement, and maintenance of these holy articles. Also, probably the oil that they had to light with that. Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the high priest, was to be chief over all the leaders of the Levites. All the Levites with their duties related to the charge of the sanctuary were under the supervision of the priests. Finally, the last group, the family of Merari, 33 through 37. Of Merari was the family of the Mahalites and the family of the Mushites. These are the families of Merari, and those that were numbered of them, according to the number of all the males, from a month old and upward, were 6,200. And the chief of the house of the father of the families of Merari was Zerah, the son of Abihail. These shall pitch on the side of the tabernacle northward. And under the custody and charge of the sons of Merari shall be the boards of the tabernacle, and the bars thereof, and the pillars thereof, and the sockets thereof, and the vessels thereof, all that serveth thereunto. And the pillars of the court round shall, and their sockets and their pins and their cords. Now remember, the tabernacle was made up of boards. There was a certain width, and they had so many of them, and underneath each one of them they had a silver socket that they stood in. In the middle they were hooked together with these, what they call them? I call them rods. They call them bars. So they were hooked together with rods. So all this stuff, that's what they had to take care of. They'd tear that down. I was reading today in a commentary, they don't say it here, but just the metal that was in the tabernacle, because you have the silver sockets, you have the gold of the Ark of the Covenant, all the menorahs and all that was 12 tons.
Oh, gosh.
We don't know how many carts and wagons and all these things that they had, but it was a lot. Okay, they had a lot to move, and the boards are like 10 foot high, I think it was, or more, maybe higher. I can't remember now. So it took a lot of people, and so that's why they got 6,200 of them. Now that's including the 1-year-olds or the 1-month-olds, but you know, say 3/4 of them, so you got 4,000 or 5,000 people to take care of all that.
Whoa.
So it's no small feat to put it together.
The tabernacle couldn't have been real small either.
It was, like we said, we looked before, it was probably from the back wall to this. It was only about 50 by 100, I think it was, something like that.
Wow.
But it was like square, 50 in this side, 50 in the Holy of Holies, or whatever it was. I don't remember. It may not even been that big. Yeah, the inside was,
that's a lot to carry.
2 squares together was the whole tabernacle. So.
And to have all that stuff in that one area. See?
Yeah, but most of it was the building itself. The boards and the sockets and all that stuff. There wasn't a lot of furniture in it. I mean, we went through that. The showbread, the table of showbread, the ark,
there was a lot of
menorahs.
Decorator stuff.
They didn't have a lot of decorations. It was part of the building itself. All the silver and the gold, because the boards were plated. The rods were a certain plate. You know, they had all these things. It was very beautiful inside.
A lot of money.
But they had to, when they put that together, it cost a lot. But those people, they gave to that to build the temple, to build the tabernacle. Verse 38, 39. Then the camp of the priests, which is just Aaron's family, but those that encamp before the tabernacle toward the east, even before the tabernacle of the congregation eastward, shall be Moses and Aaron and his sons, keeping the charge of the tabernacle for the sanctuary, for the charge of the children of Israel. And the stranger that come nigh shall be put to death. All that were numbered of the Levites, which Moses and Aaron numbered at the commandment of the Lord throughout their families, all the males from a month old and upward, were 22,000. So all the Levites were 22,000. Now, here in a minute, we're going to read another one, and another number is 22,300. See, they didn't tell us how many was in Aaron's family and in Moses' family.
No.
See, that's a total. So we're guessing the other. We're guessing maybe another 300, but we'll see here in just a minute, approximately.
Wow.
Okay. Moses and Aaron had the most honored location right in front of the tabernacle, or in front of the tent, as we say, the outside of the tent, outside of that area, the tent of meeting. That's what it is. They guarded the entrance to the tent of meeting, which was the outward wall. And they did so facing the sun. There is a sense in which the opening of the tent best faces the east, for this is the direction of the encampment of the people. Later on, Solomon was to build the holy temple in Jerusalem. Its entrance would also face the east. The morning sun would shine first on the entrance to the holy place as a symbol of the life-giving light of God that illuminates the palace in his presence. So to meet the needs of the children of Israel, the work of the priests and the Levites was for the glory of God and honor of God. Yet another essential part of their service was to meet the needs of the children of Israel. Knowing the nature of their work, this was largely focused on their spiritual needs, but certainly needs beyond the spiritual. Included needs beyond the spiritual. To do their work well as priests and Levites, they needed to be servants and sympathetic to everyone's need. And then again, it talks about them, anybody that comes near shall be put to death.
Yeah, didn't the people know that, well, a stranger meaning that nobody was a part of the camp?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
It may be somebody else coming up on it. And whether the priests or they guarded it, or whether God would strike them dead, we don't, that really doesn't.
2,000.
Yeah, we don't really. Okay, verse 40 through 41. And the Lord said to Moses, number all the firstborn of the males of the children of Israel, from a month old and upward. Take the number of their names, and thou shalt take the Levites for me. I am the Lord, instead of all the firstborn among the children of Israel, and the cattle of the Levites instead of all the firstlings among the cattle of the children of Israel. And Moses numbered as the Lord commanded all the firstborn among the children of Israel, and all the firstborn males by the number of names, from a month old and upward. Of those that were numbered of them were 22,217. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, take the Levites instead of all the firstborn among the children of Israel, and the cattle of the Levites instead of their cattle. And the Levites shall be mine. I am the Lord. And for those that are to be redeemed of the 213 of the firstborn of the children of Israel, which are more than the Levites, thou shalt even take 5 shekels apiece by the poll. After the shekel of the sanctuary shalt thou take them. The shekel is 20 gerahs. And thou shalt give the money wherewith the odd number of them is to be redeemed unto Aaron and to his sons. And Moses took the redemption money of them that were over and above them that were redeemed by the Levites. Of the firstborn of the children of Israel took he the money, 1,365 shekels, after the shekel of the sanctuary. And Moses gave the money of them that were redeemed unto Aaron to his sons, according to the word of the Lord, as the Lord commanded Moses. Now, that's a long scripture, and it's got what they did. Like I said, they had 22,000 Levites that were 1 year old and older, males. So he said, go out and count all the firstborn of all the rest of the tribes of Judah, of Israel. So they counted them up, and they had more. 22,203 scores, so 260 or 73. 273 more firstborn people than they had people in the Levites. So God said, I'm going to take the tribe of Levi for myself. Instead of taking the firstborn of each family, I'm going to take the tribe of Levi. But there's not quite enough. I didn't get enough. That's what he's saying. I didn't get my full firstborn. Then you have to offer an offering. And this offering is for each one. It tells how much for each one. Is 1,365 shekels, which is in today's money, it'd be like $871. It's not a lot, but it's something. They gave that money to Aaron and his sons. That is kind of because you didn't quite get everything that the people had.
And they didn't work. I mean, they had to take care of it.
They took care of the temple, so they didn't earn any money outside of that.
Exactly.
And also they took the cattle of the Levites. Whatever the Levites' cattle they had, they took them for the Levites. He also said, and it's just not cattle, they say cattle in their terms meant all the animals, whether it's sheep, goats, whatever they had. So they took all of them. Instead of taking the firstborn of all the tribes of Israel, cattle, the animals.
Well, Levites
they
had
took
to have
the
something
Levites.
to survive on.
They had to have the same thing. They had to have milk, they had to have the meat, they had to have hides, they had to have all these things. Now later on, they'll get more hides as the sacrifices come in, because they get the hides of the cows, and the sheep, they'll get the wool from the sheep and things like that. Because that's what we read last time when we went through Leviticus. So Well, that's all of that chapter.
Yeah. That was a good lesson.
It's actually a good place because that kind of ends the census. There's one more census at the end of Numbers, but we'll go ahead and next 4 weeks we'll go through the movie.
What I think is amazing was that
That's it.
you don't, until you see it here, you don't, in the Bible, you don't realize that since we take census now, but it was way back in the Bible time.
Yeah, that's right.
That's where it's